On Tuesday, the Middle East grew a little more tense. For at least the second time in as many months, Saudi Arabia announced that it had intercepted a missile fired by Yemen's Houthi rebels at Riyadh. No one was injured. Even so, Saudi Arabia suggested the attack was tantamount to an act of war by Iran. Saudi Arabia claims that Iran is supplying the Houthi fighters with weapons. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, backed the claim in a fiery news conference last week. Tehran denies it is providing the Houthis with weapons. But Iran has repeatedly denounced a Saudi-led military coalition that has waged airstrikes and other attacks in Yemen for more than 3 years since a Saudi-allied government was toppled. In the short term, this latest missile incursion probably won't result in any kind of direct conflict between the Middle East's two regional powers. Though it will, undoubtedly, result in the deaths of many more Yemeni civilians from airstrikes, famine, and cholera, an eminently curable disease currently ravaging the country. But it will only deepen the friction between the two nations, which have been engaged in proxy conflicts for decades. It's a rivalry at the heart of unrest in Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, and beyond. Here are some important ways to understand the disputes and suspicions. Iran is the predominant Shiite power in the region, and Saudi Arabia is a Sunni powerhouse. Is this just an age-old religious war? It's true that Saudi Arabia and Iran are on opposite sides of an Islamic rift going back to the early decades of the faith in the 7th century. Sunnis, the majority branch of Islam, and Shiites are separated by a host of differences big and small, but it began with a dispute over Islamic leadership following the death of the Prophet Muhammad. The BBC has compared the struggle between the two countries as a version of the 30 Years' War, which saw Catholic and Protestant states battle for supremacy in the 17th century. Sectarianism has certainly informed the foreign policy priorities of Iran and Saudi Arabia. Both countries have formed alliances with countries that share their version of Islam. But this isn't simply, or even primarily, a religious struggle. It's a political and economic one, a struggle for control of resources and dominance in a politically fraught region. What kicked off this decades-old conflict? No one event spun the tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. But Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution played a big role in creating the hostile environment we see today. To Saudi Arabia, the rise of the Islamic Republic posed a double threat. Its leaders were unabashedly Shiite and staunchly anti-America, a close ally of the monarchies on the Arabian Peninsula. Iran's leaders were keen to export their fervor beyond their borders. Iran's first supreme leader, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, backed Shiite militias and parties abroad. In response, Riyadh sought closer relationships with other Sunni governments. Such moves led to the formation of groups such as the Six-Nation Gulf Cooperation Council. Tensions deepened in the 1980s, when Saudi Arabia supported Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein during the Iraq-Iran War.